Now I would like to turn the meeting over to the Chair of the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board, Lieutenant General John D. Hopper.
Thanks, Eugene, and welcome to everybody. Here in Northern Virginia, it's a great spring day, and I hope you're enjoying a good day wherever you may be. We're delighted to have you join us. This is the next best thing to being there and meeting in person. At least we get to sort of put some faces with the voices. So I'm delighted that we've found the WebEx and wrangled it to do our bidding. Normally we start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And that's going to come up on the screen here in just a hot minute, and we'll get going with that. In the meantime, while we wait, I'm delighted to welcome the new Veterans Experience Officer, Mr. Bursler. Delighted to have you with us, Mr. Bursler. Thanks so much for attending. Also delighted to have Dr. Braverman as well, and Jim Warzinski. Thanks so much for your continuing presence and support. It's important to the work of the VCOEB.
Sir, let me apologize. My Adobe just crashed.
Okay, we're you know what? We're going to try to do this without a prompt. So let's everybody will do whatever you can where you are, about standing or sitting, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's normally followed by a big cheer, but you can hold your cheer today. As the DFO, Mr. Skinner mentioned, we have a full agenda today, and so I'd ask you again to keep in mind the rules of engagement, to please follow along with those. And we've got some exciting presenters on board, and we have a number of recommendations which we think are important and we'd like to get through. So without further ado, let me turn the floor over to Mr. Bursler for some comments from the VEO. Mr. Bursler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and General Hopper. It's really good to reconnect with you, sir, and thank you again, and also Philip for your time a couple of weeks ago, trying to get smart on all of the committee's activities and recommendations as best I can, so that I can effectively represent Secretary McDonough on this incredible committee and the incredible mission of this committee. But also, I'd first like to recognize Dr. Linda Davis, my predecessor, and her incredible leadership during her tenure as not only the executive sponsor for this board and this committee, but her leadership as the second Chief Veterans Experience Officer. As you all know, is big shoes to fill in many different ways, and I hope that I can bring my own perspective and service as well to only complement and her incredible contributions. Also, thank you so much to the leadership of the committee, once again, General Hopper and Philip, again, for your expertise and your continued leadership. Also, the leadership of Dr. Braverman's team. I have yet to meet all of you, but I'm very excited to learn from you as the experts on the ground and see how we can collaborate effectively together to accomplish the mission, accomplish the strategic objectives of the draft master plan. I'd also like to thank the board members and the committee members for your continued service as what we like to consider special government employees, because your work is incredibly important and impactful for the Los Angeles community and for the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. So thank you all for your continued time and dedication to this cause. Thank you for all the presenters today who are going to brief us. You all are the subject matter experts, and we will be delighted to hear more from what you're bringing to the table, so that we can take that information back to the secretary and make thoughtful decisions based on the information presented. There's going to be a lot of interesting agenda items for everyone to benefit from, hopefully, and my mission here is to do everything we can from the support of the Office of the Secretary and from the Veterans Experience Office to make sure that we accomplish those strategic and then enabling objectives of the draft master plan, and hopefully be able to get together in person at one point very soon. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn back over to you. Thank you so much for the time and for hosting me and the team here on this beautiful day. Back over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bursler. We will miss and we do miss Dr. Davis, but we're delighted to have you on board. So welcome again. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Braverman if he has any opening remarks.
Thank you very much, General Hopper and Mr. Bursler, for your comments. This is Steve Braverman. You can go to the next slide if you'd like. We did have a little outline of what we'll talk about briefly. The good news on the COVID environment standpoint is that we're not seeing very much COVID activity going on right now. For about a month now, we've been in single digits in regards to inpatient hospitalizations. We have 2 long-term veterans remaining in the hospital at this time. And our outpatient positivity rate, both for outpatients and employees, has been relatively low. And that's tracking what's happening in the community here in Los Angeles as well. So the good news with that is that it allows us to do a few things. Number one, we've removed any restrictions in regards to our procedures and operations. So those are going now full speed ahead, and we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're communicating with people whose procedures may have been delayed during part of the pandemic. Similarly, we're re-expanding our ambulatory care. We're still going to continue to have a lot of virtual care, especially as we work through waiting room area space, because we still need to have some space restrictions and mask wear. Later this week, we will have a meeting to identify other areas where we can decrease the restrictions, to include land use like reopening of the golf course, the barber shop, other areas in which some of our veteran service organizations utilize our services. We have reinstated visitation on the inpatient ward, and later this week we'll also reinstate some visitation in our nursing homes, in-person visitation, besides just the outdoor visitation that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. The other area, which is actually a priority for us and has encompassed a lot of our workforce, is the COVID vaccinations. So we still continue our testing sites, although those now have been brought back in from the dedicated locations we have. So that would be in employee health and the emergency department instead of the tents and other dedicated areas we were using before. On the vaccination side, though, we are essentially doing 2 different things. One is having vaccinations at some of our larger sites, West LA, our 2 ambulatory care centers, and periodic vaccinations at the CBOX. We're also taking vaccinations on the road. For example, we had 700 people vaccinated out in Santa Maria on Saturday. We have a special event Wednesday in Watts. We've partnered with American Legion and VFW to hold events in the San Gabriel Valley with West Covina and El Monte, and have similar things in East Los Angeles. Part of our goal is to take the vaccinations to those areas where in Los Angeles vaccination rates are low to begin with, not just in the veteran community, but the communities at large. To date, we have given over 45,000 vaccinations, to include 22,000 veterans that have gotten their first doses, another 15,000 with their second shots. And then as of about a week ago, we expanded the eligibility for vaccinations to all eligible enrolled veterans, So no longer a prioritization for vaccinations in general. We still have a prioritization fast track, if you will. So anyone in a high-risk category can get a vaccination as soon as they wish to get vaccinated. Our primary vaccine is Pfizer. We had a very limited supply of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, utilized most of that in the Santa Maria effort on Saturday so that we didn't have to take as many trips up the coast, and may also be utilizing that in our Watts vaccination effort tomorrow. We'll see how many folks sign up for that. And then 82 or so % of our staff have been vaccinated. So the combination of that really helps us to be able to decrease some of the restrictions that we have ongoing, which will also impact our ability to bring more folks into the DOM, the CTRS initiatives, and other programs across the institution. The last thing I want to mention before I turn it over to Mr. McHenrick and talk about some of the land use things on the agenda is that he was announced on Friday by the Secretary as our new Deputy Director for the healthcare system. This is a reassignment, but most of his portfolio will not change. This is in 17 other VAs across the country. This is a new position to have an SES Deputy Director. For us, it's basically a transition from Mac's previous position into this position. So he'll continue as the Executive Director of SERS and the master plan, strategic planning element, and then have additional duties as a deputy in my absence. And we appreciate the work that Mac has done for us. And like any new assignment for all of you in the military, you know that really has to do with potential more than performance. So we appreciate that as we move forward. So with that, General Hopper, I'll conclude my remarks and turn it over to Mr. McHenry.
Thanks very much, Dr. Braverman. Just one quick question. Is the staff, can you require your staff to be vaccinated?
So we required that for the flu, unless they had a medical or religious exemption. We potentially could require that for COVID once it became fully authorized, but because it's still under the emergency authorization, then we can't require that. But we've had pretty good compliance, and not very far off from the 88% compliance that we had with the required flu vaccine. We had 100% compliance with the, considered the exemptions, but 88% of the staff got the flu vaccine. So folks are doing pretty well in that area. Over.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Mr. McHenrick, congratulations on your promotion. And I noticed Dr. Braverman was quick to point out it's based upon potential. So that means good work and hard work continues, I suppose.
Yes, sir. Thank you much. I will do my best to try and live up to that potential. Going right through the slides, sir, knowing time is short, I wanted to get this list out and make sure everyone had an opportunity to have this slide. And I assume the slides will be shared or have been shared with the public. But you can see the section references within the West LA Leasing Act, the public law, for what are the EULs. And we also have some authority under 38 USC to do that as well. But the service lease authority as well in a different subsection of the West LA Leasing Act, easement authority, general, and then again in the West LA Leasing Act, RL, revocable license, where we draw that from within the West LA Leasing Act, section 2K. And then the lease to the California Regents, which we'll talk about later as well. Section 2B3 is where we draw on that. There's also authority in there, which I didn't list. I wanted to be sure to get the Land Use Advisory Committee on the slide. But in section 2 Echo 1 Alpha is the local and regional public transportation authority to do easements. But the Land Use Advisory Committee ties back to our previous discussions in between some meetings about the review process when individuals engage with us, or they can download the information from our website for our draft master plan. They can submit an application. We review the applications in this committee. We make a proposal. I make a proposal from the committee's input to the director to either grant or deny a particular land use. Some don't make it out of committee, obviously, because we don't recommend those. COVID was a good example where coming on campus and doing particular things didn't go much further than the committee because they were impractical given our current situation. And as Dr. Braverman said, we're leaning into a change there in the next few weeks, hopefully, where we can adjust our land use here. I expect the land use activity to pick up again, but it's been very slow and minimal during COVID. Next slide. But I talked about our website. You can go to this website. It's here and it'll be on the final page of the slide deck as well. You can click on the different tabs up above, leases and easements, and those will show up in blue. You can click on revocable licenses. Those will show up in red. Some of the activities under negotiation in purple. You can see the National Cemetery where they have the columbarium on the West LA campus. And then, of course, the campus boundaries. So that'll provide you information. And if you click on each of those individual activities, you'll get a snippet of information about that activity, that particular land use. So I just wanted to make sure everyone had this website and this address, and we periodically update this. And since I've been in this position over the last year, we've had some movement, but it's been somewhat stagnant. And I think land use overall is pretty well defined on the campus as far as service providers and things like that, using particular areas, providing particular services. I believe COVID has slowed down a lot of the activity on asks to use different land areas to provide services to veterans, but I expect that to change here in the next few months. Next slide. So the next few slides list all of the different land use activities that you'll find on those the prior webpage that I referenced. There's 34 land use activities that are listed here. You can see what each particular land use is. I know the slides will be shared, so it's not of great value to me for me to read each slide to each individual, but there is some information out there, and I'm glad to provide information or answer any questions in the question and answer session about any of these particular land use activities. Next slide. So here you can see the EUL buildings, 205, 208, which are under renovation right now. You can see some of the Caltrans easement, things like that, that obviously 405 is up against in the property. And then we have the on and off ramps that go onto the property. You can see the bridge home activity with the city. And then at the bottom there, the encampment that is outside the fence on San Vicente, just outside the Eisenhower Gate area, trying to support that. We have a city easement that allows for the dumpsters out there. And then we also have a easement with a VSO partner, and you'll see that in here as well for the restrooms and the hand washing station. Next slide. So that first one with the Department of Homeland Security, we were interested in their activities to provide firefighter response, which we thought was helpful to the development of all the housing on campus here and their ability through sensors and technology to be able to get into buildings and find individuals, especially getting to handicapped individuals who are unable to move from certain locations. However, the IG's review of that initial lease was that it was not veteran-centric. I'm going to use the word enough, in that they could do that anywhere else in the community for all of the community and not just for veterans. So we terminated that arrangement with them, and they have since removed their equipment from the campus. You can see some of our service providers and transitional housing there. You can see the UCLA lease for the approximately 10 acres around Jackie Robinson Stadium, and I have a separate slide for that, as that was one of the topics of discussion. Next slide. You can see some of the other University of California, UCLA activities on the campus, and that's to help them complete some of their veteran-centric activities, which is part of their overall lease agreement. Some more access agreements there to allow for California Edison to provide services on the campus. Another EUL, Building 207. Building 500 is the main medical center there for the Desert Pacific Credit Union. I know a lot of veterans use the ATMs and money machines associated with the credit union in that area. Next slide. Building 209, I talked about that previously. That is the one EUL that is up and running. We've briefed, I think the last two times we spoke, sir, on the Wadsworth Chapel Heritage Partnership, that lease that was just signed to allow for the renovation of the chapel. And then the food bank there at the bottom, that's a program that obviously wasn't moving during COVID. It was a produce market on campus where veterans could get food, and they would donate food to veterans as well. Not only did we do it here, but we started doing something similar, or a shoot off of it, at our downtown LA Ambulatory Care Center. So it's a very good program. It's just been dormant during COVID. Next slide. So this is the UCLA Lease Amendment. We talked about this previously to some degree. So the lease amendment is the second lease amendment. It allows them to build a synthetic practice infield, and you can see the conceptual rendering. You can see where it sits, and that's currently a parking lot portion that is already within their 10-acre lease. I think it's 10.08 acres that they have under that lease. So they're doing the renovation and the building on their current leasehold. So there's no change to the leasehold. There's no change to the lease period. The development of this synthetic field would be, and VA would work with the UCLA to come up with a program for joint use by veterans and their families and the UCLA baseball team. So when the baseball team wasn't using it during season or for their practice, they obviously wouldn't use it for games. It's only an infield area. Veterans and their families would be able to use it, and we would determine how and what was the best way to do that. And if we set up teams and had other activities, but it's not just baseball use. As a synthetic field, it's more durable than a grass field or the other grass field over there. And they would be able to do soccer games and other activities that wouldn't hurt the synthetic aspect of the field. One of the aspects that's very important to GLA that we got out of this second lease amendment was the removal of the overflow parking. When they did have games or other activities that were notable on the campus, they would be able to have 500 spaces of overflow parking. And with the development and the utility construction and the second phase of the columbarium entering planning stages, we wanted to recover those 500 overflow parking. So that was a good win for GLA as far as having that additional space available for veterans, staff, and employees on the North Campus. If you're not aware, as we lean into some of the principal developers' concepts for housing on the North Campus, 2 new construction housing areas are going to go on existing parking lots. So while some of the buildings are contemplated to have some underground parking, parking is going to be an issue, especially during construction when you have the need for laydown space and other activities going on. You can see the First Amendment in 2017. That was a short period of time after the initial lease was signed, but it was simply to set more formal boundaries after a survey had been returned. Obviously, the last bullet there discusses the financing for this. By no way is VA responsible for any aspect of the financing of the construction of this practice infield. Next slide. So I just wanted to make sure we had these two web addresses here for the website for the GLA, West LA, Los Angeles. Healthcare system is there. It's just losangeles.va.gov. And then the West LA draftmasterplan.org website. And then previously on the slide about the actual website for the land use agreements, once you get to the draftmasterplan.org site, you go to the subsite of land-use-partnerships, and you'll be able to get to that site. That's all I had today, sir, subject to your questions.
Thanks, Mr. McHenry. Questions?
This is Anthony Allman. Is there someone from OGC available for this particular portion of the meeting?
I can't see who's on the call, Anthony. I can just simply wait and see if someone is available.
This is Steve Braverman. Yeah, we have Megan on call if there was a particular question that somebody had, and we can get her on the call if that's something that you're interested in. Over.
Thanks. I had a question briefly regarding the OGC memo that was published on February 23rd, 2021, regarding VCOEB's ability to provide pre-decisional input with respect to land use matters at VA West LA. Specifically, I'm wondering if this is a clarification of existing policy or a change in policy. It references the VA secretary, but it doesn't specify which one.
Anthony, I can take a quick stab at that from my management position. We've received no different nor clarifying guidance beyond this initial guidance or what we perceive to be our initial posture. So I would say that's been the position all along. There's been no change or modification passed to me nor my predecessor in this position.
I agree with that as well.
My follow-up question to that is, previously the Federal Advisory Committee had adopted a recommendation which the VA secretary concurred with regarding the easement with LA Metro for the Purple Line extension station on campus. And to me, that's a very clear example of pre-decisional input. Because as we all know, the easement agreement with Metro has not been executed. So provided that the secretary concurred with that recommendation, I don't really understand the current OGC memo as it's stated.
I would have to pull that up and research that and look at it and provide an opinion. And I think I would go back and engage with legal on that, Office of General Counsel, before I gave you a formal opinion. I'm not prepared to answer that level of question right now.
Okay, because the OGC memo, I think, references a recommendation that we had made with regard to reviewing applications for land use on campus. And specifically, I remember during the discussion, we referenced the fact that that recommendation had nothing to do with leases because Congress has oversight on leases on campus, and that it was specific to short-term permits and revocable licenses. So I think the OGC memo expanded, what we were thinking beyond just those short-term permits and revocable licenses to now leases. So ultimately, I guess the concern I have is that if the Federal Advisory Committee is not able to provide input pre-decisionally with respect to leasing on campus, and the primary instrument for executing the draft master plan is VA's leasing authority, then what are we doing here? Does the Federal Advisory Committee need to exist. And I think that that's something we're going to need to work out.
I appreciate the input. I concur that we can continue this dialogue. I just need to have the right materials and the right folks for a good discussion on it.
Sure.
We can certainly look at the details of the prior recommendation and compare that and contrast with what the guidance was that was put out in the memo.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually, this is Steve Braverman. I will add just one real quick comment to that. And I think if there generally is a way to get to yes on pre-decisional input, the biggest pieces are making sure that we're not discussing issues that might end up going into contract requirements and other sorts of things. And that was a side discussion that Mac and I had with Megan after our meeting last time. So I think there are probably more specific limitations than there are general limitations that would help us tease out, where the line is that can't be crossed. So we'll look forward to having those discussions moving forward. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Braverman. Any other questions for Mr. McHenrick? Okay, great. Thanks very much. Matt, congratulations again on your selection. We look forward to working with you in your new position. Next on the agenda, I think we have a presentation from Brilliant Corners on strategies to house homeless veterans.
Yes, thank you, General Hopper. My name is Perlita Carrillo, and I'm the Associate Director of Operations and Housing Acquisitions for the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool Program at Brilliant Corners. Thank you so much for having us. My colleague is also on the line.
Hello, my name is Dan Valdez, Housing Acquisitions Manager of the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool at Brilliant Corners, and we are happy to share with you today Brilliant Corners strategies to house our most vulnerable neighbors. We'll tell you about our cornerstone program, the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool, and the successes we've seen, and we'll go into details on our work housing homeless adult and veterans using HUD vouchers in county rent subsidies.
Thanks, Dan. So next slide, please. So if you all drive through any city in California today, you'll see that we have serious work to do. We know that we need to scale housing solutions for people experiencing homelessness throughout the state. As the need for supportive housing models in California has expanded with the increase in homelessness, so has Brilliant Corners' role in the community. People are keenly aware of skyrocketing rates across California, and they may assume that lack of housing inventory and landlord reluctance are the biggest barriers to getting our neighbors housed. While such skepticism is understandable, Brilliant Corners has succeeded in tapping the wide range of private market units through dedicated landlord engagement. The scale and pace of our private market supportive housing placements across LA County over the past 6 years demonstrates the ability to rapidly scale a housing platform in the most difficult of rental markets. We know the solution to homelessness is housing, and through our community equity and numerous partnerships with property providers, we have identified a plethora of units waiting to be leased up. So who is Brilliant Corners and how do we fit into this solution? Brilliant Corners is a supportive housing nonprofit organization operating statewide to provide innovative housing and housing-related services to individuals that are transitioning from or at risk of homelessness or from an institution. We work at the intersection of housing and multiple social service sectors. So that includes developmental services, homeless services, public health and managed care, veteran services, and criminal justice. Sorry, I think our slides got replaced. Thank you. So in short, we are wherever supportive housing offers a platform for systems change, inclusive community, and personal well-being. We do this work because of a deeply held belief that the solution to homelessness is simple. By providing housing and the supportive services that help people thrive, we are getting people housed. Supportive housing is a proven, highly effective combination of subsidized housing and supportive services. We believe it works. Supportive housing removes the barriers that keep people from accessing housing, and it keeps them housed. While temporary shelters or bridge housing can provide temporary relief, they are a Band-Aid and perpetuate the cycle of folks returning to the street. Supportive housing provides stability, safety, and community benefit, and at scale, a pooled housing approach helps match vulnerable individuals with housing options available in real time to meet the public health emergency of homelessness. Next slide, please. So while the solution is simple, it's not easy, and that's where Brilliant Corners comes in. We do the hard work of locating units in the community, streamlining the matching of tenants to housing options. We pair wraparound services and leverage local and federal subsidies to get individuals housed and keep them housed. Our approach actually professionalizes housing locator services and tenancy support services. Next slide. So to date, Brilliant Corners as an agency is proud to have housed 9,323 individuals. That's nearly 200 people housed per month. Starting in 2015, Brilliant Corners began to operate the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool in partnership with the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services. The Flex Pool, as we call it for short, it's a system-changing innovation that unlocks a range of housing options and ensures housing stability through dedicated landlord engagement, rent subsidy administration, and as I mentioned, a variety of tenancy supports for the client. Through the LA Flex Pool alone, we have housed cumulatively 8,500 individuals since its inception in 2015. Tenants, landlords, sector leadership, and the public all benefit from Brilliant Corners' approach to supportive housing. Our greatest impact, though, is system-level change. So LA County's Housing for Health Division credits us with doubling the number of people they house annually. In 2017, Rand Corporation found that for every $1 invested in LA's Flex Pool, the county saved $1.20 in healthcare and other costs, which is among the largest savings ever concerning homelessness. During the first 2.5 years of LA's Flex Pool, across all public services, costs declined nearly 60%, from about $38,000 to a little over $15,000 on average. And savings totaled 20% after factoring in the expenses of providing supportive housing. Next slide, please. So what is our model? We believe our model and strategy are applicable to all populations, given our cross-sector approach. We'll get into more detail about targeted programs for housing homeless adult veterans using HUD vouchers, but we're sharing the details of our housing locator and tenancy support services with you first, because we apply this business approach across our housing services portfolio, regardless of population. So our model is based on flexibility and streamlining the process for our partners. So first, our housing acquisitions team they find units out in the community, and they cultivate property provider relationships to source new units and maintain our unit stock, or what we call here on this slide, our portfolio of units. Our tenancy supports team provides housing retention services to clients. So they facilitate move-ins, liaise between the client's case manager, and the landlord to resolve any tenant-specific or housing-related issues. They end up being very beneficial to not only our clients in providing them support, but also to our landlord partners who really come to rely on them to resolve different issues and help communication with our clients that are in their units. Our operations team, they administer all of our payments, including rent subsidy payments, any move-in assistance or deposit payments. They process applications, they perform administrative and overall financial support for our housing acquisitions team and our tenancy supports team. So those are the three teams that are internal to Brilliant Corners. And as you can see, we've professionalized the different functions across these three different branches. Those three teams then also are partnering with the intensive case management providers who provide wraparound support, and they work in tandem with our tenancy supports team. So our clients end up having 2 layers of direct support via the ICMS provider, the case manager, and also Brilliant Corners tenancy supports team. In short, we do the hard work of finding the units, streamlining the matching, and pairing that wraparound services to keep our clients in their unit and housed. And by professionalizing these services, it helps streamline the process for our partner agencies, like potentially the VA. Next slide, please. So how has Brilliant Corners made over 9,000 supportive housing placements since 2014? So this slide kind of walks us through the process. And again, it's really highlighting our professionalization of different roles. And we like to say, you wouldn't ask your realtor to be your social worker. So why do we expect social workers to be real estate agents, right? That's really kind of how we have structured our model here. So as I walk through this slide, you'll see, again, it begins with our housing acquisitions team curating a portfolio of units from out in the community by cultivating relationships with our landlords that are in the private market. Dan, my colleague, will talk through a little bit more in depth later around those financial tools that are used to bring in partners into our program. But this strategy focuses on cultivating that network of landlord and developer partners to secure units on an ongoing basis. This ends up creating a pool of units that are exclusively reserved for Brilliant Corners referrals. So units in our housing pool can be immediately matched to any client at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness, which thereby reduces the time it takes to get people housed. So these units are taken off the private market and reserved exclusively for our clients in our program. The next step here is that our partners across the multiple case management agencies refer clients into our program with the goal of us assigning a unit from our pool to that client. Brilliant Corners also recognizes that it's important to understand the motivations of our clients. Client choice is a major factor in this process. So given the narrative that some people experiencing homelessness might be, quote unquote, service resistant, Brilliant Corners has tailored its approach to housing placements to ensure pinpointed tenant to unit matching. The units we source are geared towards matching client needs and preferences on the front end, so as to also expedite the matching process. So we are gathering information on where clients would like to live, what types of amenities do they need? Do they need to be near a bus stop or a certain type of other community resource to really better assign a unit to a client, because we feel more confident in that unit meeting the needs of that particular client. I'm sorry, that unit meeting the needs of that client. And so this helps overall our acquisitions team better target, and more importantly, again, helps us make better matches to the units. If matches to units aren't working, our tenancy supports team reaches out to the intensive case manager or social worker to understand why, and then we make another match that we hope is even better. We do this work informed by a dedication to those most in need. So we focus on extremely low income individuals transitioning from or at risk of homelessness. And upon a successful placement to a unit, that client is housed. Both client and landlord are supported, again, as I mentioned, through the move-in process by our tenancy supports team. Next slide. This is another visual that outlines the staffing structure of our model that I just went over. As you can see, the 3 teams in orange are the internal teams to Brilliant Corners that we have professionalized, and the team in green, the intensive case management services, are provided by our partners out in the community and work in tandem with Brilliant Corners staff. So with that, we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to pass it on to Dan, who is now going to talk about our business model and our approach to working with landlords.
Thank you, Perlita. When we attempt to identify the success of the Flex Pool, it begins with our business model. Similar to marketers who study consumers' motivations as primary drivers of purchase decisions, our business model is based on the motivations of the landlord investor. We know that rental housing is a dollar and cent business, so clearly landlords are looking to reduce risks and maximize return on their investment. So, through our factor analysis, we've identified 4 drivers that connect the needs of landlords. It starts with rent. Landlords are looking for reliable on-time rent, rents that are secure and sustainable. Landlords prefer programs that pay rent directly to them rather than going through the tenant. No vacancies. A big expense is turnover in vacant units. Frequent move-outs increase the cost of operation to the owner. By reducing vacancies, you increase profitability, which is the end goal for many and most landlords. Damage mitigation. Landlords may be willing to rent to program participants if they know that mitigation funds are in place to offset some of the risk. Landlords prefer programs with incentives and added security to work with tenants receiving rental assistance. But by far, the most important of the 4 that we've identified is support. Others call it customer service. We call it key account management. We assign a housing acquisition specialist to assist with landlord support and acts as an account manager. Key account management provides support for landlords who often feel abandoned and neglected during challenging times. I will provide an example of how we operationalize our key account management later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So it's no coincidence that our housing acquisition model is based on the motivations of the landlord. Our strategic and tailored approach that has unlocked thousands of private market units is based on 3 components. Housing acquisitions. As my colleague Perlita referenced, we have a team of housing acquisition specialists who are effective in shoe leather, face-to-face outreach. They engage with property providers using financial instruments to consistently secure dozens of units each month. As a result, the housing team has established relationships with not only mom and pop landlords, but some of the largest property management companies and investors in Southern California. Service. This is our secret sauce. For many and most, service means customer service. Again, we call it key account management. So similar to a real estate asset manager who looks out for a landlord's best interests, so do we. We distinguish accounts as key accounts and non-key accounts. In either case, we're involved in the life cycle of the property. Retention. Landlord retention is all about key account management. As a result, 80% of our repeat business is 20% of our key accounts. We take a high-touch customer service, private sector business approach to our property provider cultivation and retention through key account management. This is what separates us from every rental subsidy program in America. Next slide, please. Now we'll share some of the incentives that the FlexPool provides to landlords. We offer a suite of customizable legal and financial tools that make the process very appealing to property providers. And it begins with a unit holding agreement that quickly takes a vacant unit off the market and holds it until it's been matched with a client. These tools will need to be funded by the VA if we're very fortunate to work with you, but they're really extremely important to secure units and to ensure quick and easy veteran placements. Streamline Inspections. Once we identify a unit, our housing team mobilizes quickly to conduct housing quality inspections, thus shortening the time than most traditional housing authorities. Move-in payments. We provide double security deposit for many of our clients. This action reassures landlords and provides financial cushion. Move-in assistance is used to fund household needs. We provide furniture, bedding, cookware, and utility activation. Property provider incentives. We encourage property provider participation. One way we do that is by lease signing bonus, damage mitigation, and inspection repair grants. Flexible financial assistance. We provide funding to support and maintain clients' tenancy, such as past due rent balances, unit repairs, and unit modifications. We work with landlords to connect them to contractors who are ADA compliant and assist with the client needs. Rent subsidy administration. Brilliant Corners administers ongoing rental payments, requiring full operation team's capacity. For example, we're able to issue payments within 7 days of acquiring a unit. This action resonates with landlords who often wait 30 to 45 days or more from traditional housing authorities to receive their first housing authorities payment. Next slide, please. So when we think about creative business approaches to landlord engagement, it begins with key account management. Key account management is a long-term strategy that focuses on developing and maintaining relationships. Acting as an account manager, our housing acquisitions team provides data-driven analysis, graphs, Venn diagrams, financial modeling to landlords' investments. We have a very high-touch approach with frequent check-ins. So similar to a financial manager, we create a property prospectus, a pro forma financial report focused on quantitative and qualitative data that outline, among other things, cash flow, growth, and value. This has become our formula for retention and success. The feedback from property providers and management companies is amazing. This is what separates us from every subsidy program in America. Having worked for 3 housing authorities in Southern California and partnered with many more across the country, this revolutionary approach is a key to landlord participation and retention. So while other subsidy programs may not have the capacity, the mindset, or make it a priority, we do. It is embedded in our organization and an innovative game changer with rental subsidy programs. Next slide, please. Brilliant Corners is no stranger to the VA. Brilliant Corners already has very strong relationships with the VA. Our San Francisco Bay Area Veterans Services is comprised of 2 programs that provide innovative clinical case management to veterans who are in need of housing in the Bay Area. For example, San Francisco's HUD-VASH program is a collaborative program between HUD and the VA that combines HUD housing vouchers with VA supportive case management to assist homeless veterans and their families to find and sustain permanent housing in San Francisco and San Mateo counties. Our Brilliant Corners San Francisco Veterans Services team supports our veteran clients with voucher applications, housing search, move-in supports, and retention services through wraparound services and case management. Brilliant Corners has contracted with San Francisco VA since 2011, and we are currently in our 2nd contract cycle. We are contracted to serve 209 clients, and this was increased from 150 in the first contract. We are pleased to say that 99% of our clients are currently housed. From 2011 to 2016, we partnered with San Francisco VA community-based outpatient clinic mental health providers to form a Housing First pilot team tasked to provide a team-oriented approach toward case management for high acuity, complex cases, for example, chronic homelessness, substance abuse, mental, physical health, high-risk behaviors that required increased support. Coma Veterans Village is a 66-unit affordable housing community building that opened in 2019 to serve low-income veterans. In partnership with Mercy Housing and the San Francisco VA, Brilliant Corners Veterans Services provides on-site wraparound services so that veterans can thrive in housing and in their community. Next slide, please. We are extremely excited to introduce the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool to San Diego, which was launched in the fall of 2020. The Flex Pool improves San Diego's homelessness system by identifying and securing permanent housing for people experiencing homeless. The housing acquisitions team spent 3 months establishing relationships with landlords and property owners across San Diego County to create a portfolio of units diverse in size and location. The Flex Pool receives referrals directly from the VA and is providing support in San Diego County. The services include housing unit identification and placement, move-in coordination, housing retention services, and partnering with VA case management services. There are 26 referrals in the pipeline and 11 current placements. Next slide, please. Beyond our San Francisco and San Diego partnerships with the VA, Brilliant Corners serves nearly 100 additional veterans across other statewide housing programs, utilizing local and county vouchers and our effective combination of housing locator services, tenancy support, and wraparound case management. In LA County, we began working with the VA in 2013 to serve 100 clients. In that contract, tenancy supports were not provided for veterans, and the social workers provided housing location services. One of the big takeaways for us in operating the flexible housing subsidy pool is that the combination of housing locator services, tenancy support, and wraparound case management is a key recipe for success. Professionalizing each of those functions, because they are different skill sets, contributes to program impact, exceptional service for clients and landlord partners alike, and the ability to rapidly scale placements. We know how homelessness is a profound inequity that requires a strategic alignment of cross-sector entities. And most importantly, we know housing is a key to ending homelessness with supportive services to keep people housed through this effective evidence-tested strategy. I hope that hearing more about our approach has been helpful, and we look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan and Perlita. Questions for Brilliant Corners?
Hi, General Hopper. It's Dr. Bamberger. Thanks so much. Dan, Perlita, thank you for your really informative, straightforward, clear presentation. Really helps. I think our group has some interesting questions. Clearly, the secret sauce of landlord relations is the key to this success, establishing relationships, trust, and so forth. But another real component that I'd love you to flesh out a little bit more is holding these units when no one is in it. So how does that work, and how has that worked with the VA? How is basically the rent paid when there isn't a person identified for the unit? Where does that funding come from, and how do you work that within the HUD-VASH system?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So for our units, when our housing acquisitions team goes out in the community to acquire these units and puts them, basically reserves them, we have an agreement. We have so many acronyms here at Brilliant Corners. We call it the RVU, but it stands for an agreement regarding vacant unit. And so that's pretty much a hold. It's a holding agreement for a unit. Different programs have different timeframes, but we use up to 4 months. And so this holding agreement commits to paying that landlord for that rent while the unit is vacant and while we're doing these matches and having clients view the units. And at the time of those 4 months, if for whatever reason we haven't had a successful placement, at that point, the team may reassess if we need to continue with that unit in our portfolio or not. But these costs in our budget, they are a separate line item. So it's overall vacancy costs. And the way that they are billed to a funder, because it's a pool. So just say, for example, vacancy costs are, I'm saying a random number, $10,000 for a month. If in that month, we will do a proportion of how many units were seen by a particular funder's clients. So if we had Department of Health Services clients, they saw 10 units, the VA clients, there was 50. We will do a proportion, 50 out of those 60 total unit showings. That would be the proportion of the $10,000 costs. So there is a varying amount of vacancy costs per month, since it just depends on the total number of units that are under our contract and how many of your clients are actively seeing those units during a particular month.
Thanks. I think I understand that, but I'd love to learn more. I would love to open up the questions to other people who are on our committee and to see if any of the people in the VA leadership would have any specific questions for you guys.
Philip Mangano here, Dr. Bamberger. I just wanted to thank the people from Brilliant Corners. I think the key word in all that you spoke was the professionalization of services. Often these services are provided, but not in a very professional way. The various dimensions of it are given to people who don't really have the capacity and the gene pool to resolve issues. Sometimes housing search is given to case managers. It's not a match. So the idea of professionalizing those services, I think that's an outstanding part of what you're doing. And just to add a broader dimension to it, there are programs like Brilliant Corners, not exactly with the same footprint, not exactly with the same principles, but they're at work. So for example, Greater Boston, there's been a housing search program that's housed thousands and thousands of homeless people that began in the early 1990s. It continues to function now, nearly 30 years later. And in a few other cities around the country, that kind of model has been flourishing, as close as San Bernardino with their Inland Empire effort that's going on there. So this isn't a model that simply works in California. It's a model that works in many other places. But the specific question I wanted to ask, and again, I appreciate so much what Brilliant Corners has done in San Francisco and around the state. Oftentimes what we hear is that the vacancy rate is so low that quote unquote affordable housing isn't available, so it's impossible to house homeless people. And then the attendant to that is that there are many, many, many homeless people who don't want housing. They prefer not to have housing. Could you respond to those two questions, those two reflections from your experience and the thousands of people that you've housed in California?
Yeah, so it's been our experience that we have to dispel those type of myths. Because right now, we often get contacted by many landlords in the Los Angeles area asking us to market their units. For a nonprofit organization, the request I often get is that, hey, Dan, we have a building that we'd like to buy in San Fernando Valley. Do you have any clients? And that's amazing. When you think about like these investors who have real estate attorneys, consultants, reaching out to a nonprofit organization because they understand our model. This is a model that resonates with them. It's a business model. And our approach, as I mentioned about the key account management, it's not a sales strategy. It's an overall business strategy that includes contributions to other departments that Perlita and I had mentioned, operations, tenancy support, and so on. So I think when I hear about there's not any units available, I see differently. On any given month, we have up to 30 to 80 units available for clients that we market through our with intensive case management services. So there's quite a bit there. In terms of clients, I don't have a lot of contacts with the clients, but I normally deal with just landlords. But certainly, I think if they feel that clients are resistant, I'm not saying that. When I work with landlords and we're reaching out with and connecting them to clients, they're very grateful, and they often provide us like feedback through the landlord about, hey, like this is something that we've been looking for, and this is really working for us.
So would you characterize those two objections? Because sometimes we hear with regard to housing locator or housing search that even if you implemented that, it wouldn't work because there aren't the units and the people don't want to go into them. Would you characterize those two contradictions to your model? Those are essentially myths, are they not?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I would think so. I think those are misconceptions. When I started Brilliant Corners 3 years ago, almost going on 3 years, I fell into that, and I quickly seen through those connections, through those partnerships, that's not the case.
Yeah, I would agree with Dan that, I mean, while there are always going to be some, some outliers, I think there are certain challenges that some of our clients are going to face, or clients will face. But I do think, generally speaking, within the flex pool, that has not been our experience. And we think that our model, when it comes to the landlords, because of the relationships that the housing team has been able to really cultivate and like continue to foster, landlords are calling us when they have these vacancies. So, and then on the client side, I think our approach of really trying to get the most up to date, current preference information and very specific. It's not just enough to say, oh, I want to live in SPA 4 of LA County. That's large. That's so there's so many nuances there. We're really getting information down to the neighborhood, which then Dan's housing acquisitions team is just great at sourcing units up. So I think that also helps our ability for our clients to like kind of really buy in. And then there's a close constant connection between our tenancy supports and the client's case manager. When we do have some of those challenging experiences, they really definitely like case conference and really try to do a little bit more of a targeted and tailored approach.
Well, thanks so much for your great work that dispels those myths. Thank you, Dr. Bamberger.
Any other questions that we have, either from VA leadership or from the committee? We are running short of time, but I do think the next section will not take all the time that we have allocated. So perhaps if there are any other questions for Brilliant Corners.
I have one follow-up question, and I'm definitely not as sophisticated on this topic as our Vice Chair, Dr. Bamberger, but for Brilliant Corners, have you, or in your experience working with landlords, what does public recognition play a role at all in terms of incentivizing landlords to participate housing homeless veterans? In other words, I think we hear oftentimes that in LA the market is so tight that the Section 8 vouchers aren't as effective as they could be elsewhere. And so I wonder, I think you had mentioned maybe that's not the case, but does VA need to think about other ways of incentivizing landlords to participate in the program?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the interactions that our team has had with landlords is like, who doesn't want to help a veteran, right? And that's one population that we really, and that we're getting feedback from landlords, want to be part of. In terms of public recognition, I don't know if I can really answer that question, but certainly we have landlords who believe in what we do, who believe not only as an investor standpoint, but as really literally holding the keys to change people's lives. We have partners who work with us and definitely demonstrate that spirit in housing our clients.
Thanks so much, Dan. Anything else, or handing it back over to you, General Hopper?
Okay, thanks very much, Dr. Bamberger. I am just going to hand it right back to you. We're going to start trying to get through the recommendations. And I think first up is the Services and Outcomes Subcommittee. And I think you all have two recommendations.
Yeah, we do. So, all right, pivoting to this. Sorry. Thanks. Just want to once again thank Dan and Perlita for hanging in there, and thanks. And if you want to stick around, I'm sure you can. But we're going to move on to our other things. All right. So, as you all know, one of the tools that the VCOEB has is to write recommendations, and then to have those recommendations brought to the VA Secretary for either to concur if he wishes. So we have today, I think, 6 or 7 of them, which is a lot for us. And the first 2 have to do with the specific issue we were just talking about, which is getting homeless veterans housed at a more rapid rate so that we can start to work down on this unacceptable situation with veterans sleeping on the streets. So I'll just read the first recommendation. pretty quickly, I hope, so follow along. Whereas permanent supportive housing is the best solution to end homelessness for the approximately 3,902 veterans experiencing homelessness in the county, and that's from the last point in time count. Whereas as of March 2021, housing authorities in Los Angeles County have been issued 7,665 HUD-VASH vouchers, and 5,115 are being used presently to support rent, leaving at least, not including newly awarded vouchers and reallocations, 2,550 vouchers that have yet to be used to support the rent of homeless veterans. Whereas VAGLAHS is averaging approximately 102 new housing placements each month, whereas at the current pace of utilization, just the existing allotment of HUD-VASH vouchers will not be utilized until January of 2023. Whereas Los Angeles County Department of Health Services and other veteran-focused community partners have successfully contracted with and utilized housing locator services from community-based organizations to efficiently utilize housing choice vouchers for people experiencing homelessness. Now, therefore, let it be recommended the Secretary of Veterans Affairs instruct the leadership of VAGLAHS to use all available agencies and resources to increase the pace of placement into permanent supportive housing units for veterans experiencing homelessness by increasing the average monthly voucher utilization to at least 212 vouchers a month to successfully utilize all existing HUD-VASH vouchers by May of 2022. In witness whereof, the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board adopts this recommendation if we so vote today, March 23rd, 2021.
Okay, thanks very much, Dr. Bamberger. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I would support a motion.
I second that.
I need a motion first. I probably didn't make the motion.
I motion to vote on our first recommendation, 1201.
Thank you very much. And a second.
Second by Philip Mangano.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed?
Sarah Serrano.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't hear that.
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Okay, it appears that recommendation 1201 is approved unanimously. Second recommendation.
All right. If it's okay, I'm going to sort of, well, I guess I'll read the whole thing. Hang in there with me, everyone. Recommendation 12.02, whereas as of March 2021, there are approximately 86 vacant staff positions at VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System to serve veterans experiencing homelessness in the HUD-VASH program. Whereas as of March 2021, 66 of the 86 vacant HUD-VASH positions are case management positions. Whereas VAGLAHS has initiated contracts in the past with local community-based organizations to provide additional case management and social work services for homeless veterans. And this is a long one, guys. Whereas as of January 5th, 2021, Section 4207 of Public Law 116-315 from HR 7105, Johnny Isaacson and David P. Rowe, MD, Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act of 2020, requires the VA to enter into contracts with eligible entities to provide casework management of HUD-VASH vouchers upon a determination by the Secretary one or more case management positions have been vacant for at least 9 months. Now, therefore, let it be recommended as of October 1st, 2021, which is 9 months from when the law was signed, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs take immediate steps to implement the new authority outlined in Section 4207 of Public Law 116-315, requiring the VAGLAHS contract with eligible entities to provide casework management for HUD-VASH vouchers, in witness whereof today.
Thank you, Dr. Bamberger. Let me open the floor to the board members for any discussion on recommendation 1202. Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
A motion to vote on 1202.
And a second, please.
I second it. Christine.
That was Christine that seconded the motion.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing the nays, the second recommendation is approved unanimously. We'll move on now to the Master Plan Subcommittee. And let me just, a preface that I should have added before Dr. Bamberger got started is we look for the best protocol. And so we apologize for reading the recommendations to you, even though they're on the screen. But we decided that was the best way to get them in the record. Even at that, I would offer to you that you should look at the full recommendation for members of the public and for the other GLA staff and VA staff. There is a lot of homework, a lot of research, and so there are exhibits that go with several of the recommendations that support the recommendation. So without further ado, I'll move to Mr. Allman and the Master Plan Subcommittee.
And General Hopper, just let me say one quick thing before we leave. I just want to
Yes.
commend the Services Subcommittee for the hard work that went into crafting these two recommendations. We've been at this discussion, I think, since September. So the lack of discussion that happened during this formal part we're voting is not indicative of the hard work and constant back and forth that we've been doing. So thank you to you all for participating in this process and getting it to this stage today.
That's a great point, Dr. Bamberger, and I concur completely. And it goes for the Master Planning Subcommittee as well. What you see here is the distillation of a lot of individual research and represents really some intense and great work. Now, moving on to Master Plan Subcommittee.
Thank you, sir. VCOEV recommendation 12-03. Whereas VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System is the largest VA medical center in the nation, whereas enhanced dialogue between VA, GLA, HS, and veterans is essential to fostering a greater level of trust and transparency, whereas VA Form 10-10EZ application for health benefits, field 10H email address, captures the veteran's electronic contact information upon enrollment in healthcare benefits, whereas VA Form 10-10EZR Health Benefits Update Form, Field 9 email address, captures the veteran's electronic contact information upon possible relocation to a geographic area, whereas Field 10 and Field 9 are optional in providing such information during enrollment in healthcare benefits or updating health benefits should be considered a form of consent for the purpose of email communication between the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs and the veteran. Whereas as of February 14th, 2019, there are only 7,679 subscribers to VA GLA HS's Gov Delivery Distribution Network, whereas currently veterans may largely be unaware that medical centers develop and maintain their own email communication strategy regarding the provision of healthcare or other related services, and whereas keeping veterans up to date on such activity could encourage more veterans to access services from their assigned medical center. Now, therefore, let it be recommended, the Secretary of Veteran Affairs create a pilot communications initiative at VA GLA HS to automatically include veterans upon enrollment, upon completion of VA Form 10-10EZ or VA Form 10-10EZR as part of their assigned medical center's communications network via Gov Delivery, and recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs encourage at least quarterly data information sharing between relevant VA offices to ensure information provided in both past and future VA forms are included in the pilot communications initiative, a witness whereof the VCOAB adopts this recommendation as of March 23rd, 2021. So long story short, what this recommendation is proposing is that VA uses the email addresses captured during a veteran's enrollment in healthcare or relocation to, for example, Los Angeles, and automatically include that information in GLA's email distribution network. Right now, a veteran would have to go to losangeles.va.gov and know that there's an email distribution list which they can sign up for. And I think that's a missed opportunity for veteran engagement.
Thank you, Anthony. Any discussion?
Anthony, this is Josh. Can you inform the committee on how this would not result in veterans getting overwhelmed with extraneous information into their email system that just feels like a flood?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think oftentimes now veterans receive a lot of information that they maybe didn't sign up for and can't get off a mailing list. The way that the Gov Delivery Network or distribution network operates is like any other electronic mailing list where you have the option to unsubscribe at any point in time.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the recommendation?
This is Jim Zenner. I'd like to motion to approve 12-03.
Thank you, Mr. Zenner. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, a second?
It's Christine, I second it.
Thank you, Christine. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of this recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the recommendation is approved. Next recommendation.
Okay. VCOAB recommendation 12-04 alpha. Whereas Article 6, Item 23 of the lease agreement between the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs and the University of California, Los Angeles, executed on December 23rd, 2016, requires an annual audit to obtain third-party verification of the leasee's compliance with lease obligations. Whereas Section 2, Item F of the revocable license permit between VA and the City of Los Angeles Department of Recreation and Parks, executed on September 1st, 2016, requires an annual audit to obtain third-party verification of the city's compliance with the revocable permit. Whereas VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System has provided a third-party auditor, DCA Watson Rice LLP, with an undisclosed list of veteran stakeholder email addresses. Whereas VCOAB believes unsolicited emails from a third-party auditor to veteran stakeholders is not an effective communication strategy to obtain veteran feedback. Whereas this claim is supported by the underwhelming quantity, too, of respondents to the fiscal year 17 UCLA lease audit. No additional UCLA audits are available to the public at this time. Whereas VCOAB submits the third-party auditor's method of obtaining stakeholder feedback is overly burdensome, which is diminishing veteran participation in annual audits. And whereas the Secretary of the VA concurred with previous VCOAB recommendations to include broad electronic notification of draft master plan public notices and events through the VA GLA-HS Gov Delivery email marketing platform. Now, therefore, let it be recommended the Secretary of Veterans Affairs instruct leadership at VA GLA-HS to include all notices of annual audits on campus as a draft master plan public notice for the purpose of distribution through the VA GLA-HS Gov Delivery email marketing platform. In witness thereof, whereof VCOAB adopts this recommendation as of March 23rd, 2021.
Thank you, Anthony. Any discussion on this recommendation?
I'd just like to add that the significance of this recommendation is that many veterans may receive an email from a party that they've never heard of, and they're expected to trust this party and download a form, print out the form, fill out the form, scan the form, attach the form to an email, and send it back in. And you know, it's a complicated process, and I think that it could be streamlined. And this recommendation, as well as the following recommendation, is intended to increase veteran participation in these annual audits. One thing I'll add is that I did not include reference in this recommendation to Brentwood School because I could not find an annual audit requirement. And that's something we'll find maybe is missing. I think it's a different cycle, but we'll have to address that in an additional recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Other discussion points? Hearing none, is there a recommendation to approve?
Hi, it's Josh. I'll recommend to approve the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Bamberger. And a second?
This is Jim Zenner. I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Zenner. Any further discussion? Excuse me. Hearing none. I'm sorry. I cut someone out. Who was that?
Yeah, this is Jim Zenner. I just like Anthony said, I printed it off, filled it out, sent it in, and then the next day I got an email from the agency saying that they had created a different type of form, and I didn't fill out the second one. And there was no indication on that email whether or not my previous submission was going to be counted with this new mid-course change that they implemented. So I think this is a very important recommendation to take a look at and consider to vote yea on.
Thank you, Jim. And any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of this recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the recommendation passes unanimously. Next recommendation.
This recommendation is an extension of the previous recommendations. So I don't think I'll read the preamble. I'll just fast forward to now, therefore, let it be recommended that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs instruct leadership at VA GLA-HS that future opportunities to participate in annual audits take the form of an online survey, reducing barriers to veteran participation and critical stakeholder feedback regarding performance of various land use agreements on campus. A witness whereof the VCOAB adopts this recommendation as of March 23rd, 2021. So again, this goes, I think, back to Jim's point about, this could be as easy as VA sending out an email notifying veterans that there is an annual audit. They click on a link and input their feedback, and that's it.
Thank you, Anthony. Any discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
This is Jim Zenner.
I'll move to recommend.
Okay, I have Ms. Serrano move to approve the recommendation. Is there a second?
This is Jim Zenner. I second that.
Thank you, Jim. It's been recommended for approval and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving this recommendation signify by
Aye.
Aye.
opposed. The ayes have it. The recommendation is approved unanimously. Next recommendation.
Sir, with respect to this recommendation, I have a correction that I'd like to make before reading. If there's reference to Title 38, Section 101, I made an error. It should be corrected to Public Law 114-226 section. So I apologize ahead of time.
Okay, we will make that correction after we consider the recommendation, or as we consider.
VCOAB recommendation 12-05 alpha. Whereas on February 10th, 2021, VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System Office of Public Affairs released an announcement indicating that it had already entered into a second lease amendment between VA and the Regents of the University of California to permit construction and operation of a synthetic practice baseball infield. Whereas at no point in time prior to the announcement did VA GLA-HS advise the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board of its intention to amend the existing lease with UCLA for its baseball complex. Whereas VCOAB has since received public comment and criticism from veterans or members of the community regarding the appropriateness of adding additional baseball facilities on campus as inconsistent with the master plan. Whereas on March 2nd, 2021, the VCOAB leadership received a briefing from the VA GLA-HS leadership and expressed concern that the lease amendment was made without prior briefing or input from the VCOAB, and further, without any veteran input whatsoever. Whereas on February 23rd, 2021, VA Office of General Counsel distributed a memorandum claiming that VCOAB could not provide any pre-decisional input on West LA campus land use matters. Whereas the OGC memo further claimed that even though VCOAB is authorized to provide input recommendations to the Secretary, and the Secretary then provide input to the VA GLA-HS, that such an approach is not permissible because, quote, such a process would impermissibly impede critical leadership decision-making by VA GLA-HS officials, end quote. Whereas the effect of the combined claims of the OGC memo is that VCOAB may allegedly not provide any input to leasing decisions prior to the time that they are made, notwithstanding the VCOAB's congressionally mandated role to provide advice and recommendations on the implementation of the draft master plan approved by the Secretary on January 28, 2016, and on the creation and implementation of any successor master plans. This is where we would insert the correction I mentioned before. Now, therefore, let it be recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs terminate the UCLA second lease amendment on the grounds that it is not consistent with the master plan, does not sufficiently benefit veterans and their families, and disproportionately favors UCLA's interest on campus without proof of any expansion of UCLA services to the campus to justify enlargement of the Regents' rights. Veterans currently have priority access to 2 recreational baseball fields located on Veterans Barrington Park per Section C, Item 2 of the September 1st, 2016 revocable license agreement with the City of Los Angeles. Veterans currently have access to 3 additional recreational baseball facilities as part of the November 4th, 2016 lease agreement with Brentwood School, the existence of 6 baseball facilities on campus does not merit the construction of an additional baseball facility on campus. In witness whereof, the Veterans and Community Oversight Engagement Board adopts this recommendation as of March 23rd, 2021.
Thank you, Anthony. Discussion.
Hi, it's Josh again. I just want to point out to the group, baseball, to me, it's not a big issue about whether or not there's going to be baseball fields, but the issue of having us being consulted and the main function that we have been congressionally mandated to do is being undermined by the fact that this decision was made without ever seeking any counsel from our board. This is the existential question that Anthony started with this morning. And I just wanted to reiterate that in the public record, that it's so critical, I think, if we're going to have any function to influence or to provide oversight or advice, that we are included in these decisions at some point along the way. Not that we are making an up or down decision as how the VA spends its money, but we have to be consulted, or else what is the point of us existing? So even though you may get caught up in the baseball issue, to me, that's sort of a secondary issue as to the function, the existential function of what our oversight board is here to do.
Thank you, Dr. Bamberger, for those comments. Although he who puts down baseball runs a serious risk. But we will continue. Any other discussion points?
I wasn't putting down baseball.
Okay.
It's secondary.
Hot dogs, apple pie.
I would just add that, at this point, we have more baseball facilities on campus than permanent supportive housing facilities. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't make any sense. And with regard to access for this synthetic baseball field, I think veterans would tell you that they have enough trouble accessing the baseball fields at the City of LA Veterans Barrington Park for recreational purposes, or Brentwood School for recreational purposes. It's hard enough as it is. I don't think veterans would tell you that they need an additional baseball field for recreational purposes on campus.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Any other discussion?
Yeah, this is Jim Zenner again, just working with homeless veterans over the last 11 years. A lot of the work that goes into it, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call understand that it's about building trust. And for me, it's exactly what Josh was saying, really just the transparency piece and creating a back and forth that builds trust in the veteran community. That's all I had.
Thank you, Jim. Good points. Other discussion, comments? Hearing none, is there a recommendation to approve this? Is there a motion to approve this recommendation?
Jennifer Marshall, I'd like to make a motion to approve, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
It's Christine, I second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve that's properly seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of this recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the recommendation is approved unanimously. Next recommendation.
Similar to the previous recommendation, this is an additional recommendation with the same preamble, so I won't reread the preamble. I'll just get to the recommendation itself. Can we get to the page 2, please? Now, therefore, let it be recommended that before GLA-HS is authorized to enter into or modify any existing leases with the Regents of the University of California, that VA GLA-HS must make a presentation to VCOEB establishing its due diligence to assure itself that the lease is consistent with the master plan. In witness whereof, the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board adopts this recommendation as of March 23rd, 2021.
Thank you, Anthony. Any discussion here?
Yes, this is Jim Purley. Anthony, well done on how you set this up strategically as far as how you're going down the road on this. I think it's going to be very effective.
Thank you, Jim. Other comments or discussion points? Yes. I stepped on someone.
No, sir, that was me. I just said thanks to Jim Purley and obviously the about 30 or 50 emails that the Master Plan Subcommittee traded on these particular issues.
Okay. Other discussion points?
Mr. Chair, if I can, this is Dennis Tucker. Just wanted to mention commendable work on Anthony Altman's team for bringing this forth, these two measures as well. So just wanted to give a shout out to him and his team, sir.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other comments? Hearing none, is there I'm sorry?
Sorry, just one thing to add, sir. I think the intent all along from the Federal Advisory Committee is not to make decisions on behalf of VA. It is the fact that we are, I think, asserting our role in the West LA Leasing Act to provide advice and recommendations with respect to execution of the master plan. The only thing we seek is input and the ability to comment, and whatever VA does is their decision. I don't think the Federal Advisory Committee is attempting to advocate that they take the role of making these decisions on behalf of VA. I think that should be clear.
Thanks, Anthony. That is a good point. This board is not in the decision-making process, but we are tasked with providing oversight and recommendations to the secretary. We can't do that without being part of the discussion, particularly with regard to land use. Any other comments? Hearing none, I need a recommendation, a motion to approve this recommendation.
Mark Welsh, I so move.
Thank you, Mark. It's been suggested that we approve the recommendation. Is there a second?
This is Christine, I second.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all who favor approval of this recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the recommendation is unanimously approved. Next recommendation.
VCOAB recommendation 12-06. Whereas on January 10th, 2019, the Veterans Oversight and Community Engagement Board adopted a recommendation, quote, that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs and Office of Real Property approve mutually agreeable plans for development and operations of the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority Purple Line Extension Station at VA West Los Angeles, end quote. Whereas on June 26, 2019, the Secretary of Veteran Affairs concurred with VCOAB's recommendation and endorsement, quote, of ongoing efforts to reach mutually agreeable terms with LA Metro for the construction and operation of a Purple Line extension station at the VA West Los Angeles campus, end quote. Whereas on February 23rd, 2021, VA Office of General Counsel distributed a memorandum claiming that the VCOAB could not provide any pre-decisional input on West LA campus land use matters. Whereas as of March 22nd, 2021, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs has not executed an easement agreement with the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority for the construction and operation of a Purple Line extension station on the VA West Los Angeles campus. Whereas the Secretary of the VA both received and concurred with VCOAB's pre-decisional input regarding land use at VA West Los Angeles on June 26, 2016. Whereas VCOAB's continued input with regard to land use matters at VA West Los Angeles is appropriate under Federal Acquisition Regulations, Section 1-602, subsection 2C, which states that, quote, contracting officers shall request and consider the advice of specialists in audit, law, engineering, information security, transportation, and other related fields as appropriate. Whereas VCOAB's input with respect to land use at VA West Los Angeles shall be considered appropriate per Section 2, subsection I-1C of the West LA Leasing Act, Public Law 114-226. Now, therefore, let it be recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs instruct Office of General Counsel to develop a legal process by which the department can comply with existing contracting laws while allowing VCOAB to fulfill its duties established in the West LA Leasing Act of 2016.
Thank you, Anthony. Discussion on this recommendation.
I'll just add that the gist of this recommendation is that we've provided pre-decisional input in the past.
Yeah.
VA, the Secretary, has concurred with those recommendations. Why is it different now? And I think under the West LA Leasing Act, our role, the Federal Advisory Committee's role in providing advice and recommendations regarding the master plan and the creation and execution of successor master plans, it's pretty clear. It seems appropriate.
And Anthony, this is Josh. I just want to also just say, not only have you highlighted this, I think, error, but you've provided us, a pathway for solution by asking the General Counsel to give a recommendation or a solution. So I think you've done a great job of crafting all these components and handing it on a silver platter. Let's do our job and move forward and help the VA to do what they need to do in their relationship with our committee, our oversight board.
Thank you, Dr. Bamberger. Other comments, discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve this recommendation?
This is Christine. I move to approve and vote for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Josh, I'll second that.
Thank you, Dr. Bamberger. It's been motioned and seconded to approve this recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving this recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Hey, Mr. Chair, this is Dennis again. I am not opposing. I will abstain because I am a human resource director at LA Metro, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Dennis, thank you very much. So let the record reflect that Mr. Tucker abstained. Hearing no nays, the motion is, the recommendation is approved. Next recommendation, which I believe should be our last. I think so. Recommendation 1207, and I will read that for you very briefly. Whereas VA Secretary Bob McDonnell appointed a special advisor to develop and execute the draft master plan, as well as streamline placement of homeless veterans into permanent supportive housing throughout Los Angeles County. Whereas the appointment of a special advisor led to a comprehensive outreach and communications effort, which yielded unprecedented input, 1,002 public comments from veterans, veteran service organizations, and community stakeholders throughout development of the draft master plan. Whereas the draft master plan set forth a potential phasing timeline of 490 units within the first 30 months, 280 additional units within 4 to 5 years, and 430 additional units within 6 to 10 years of receiving authorization from Congress. Whereas the West Los Angeles Leasing Act of 2016 became Public Law 114-226 on September 29, 2016. Whereas as of today, there are only 54 permanent supportive housing units for homeless veterans at VA West Los Angeles. Whereas the draft master plan identified female veterans with and without dependents as a target population for deserving particular use of the campus. Female veterans with and without dependents are excluded from housing programs at Building 257, 46 beds, and a bridge home, 80 beds on campus. Whereas the draft master plan established that VA would periodically review and reevaluate the draft master plan every 3 years to ensure the plan continues to meet the evolving needs of veterans. Whereas the draft master plan is overdue for a reassessment, and whereas there are still at least 3,904 veterans who remain homeless throughout Los Angeles County. Now, therefore, let it be recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs appoint a new special advisor for the express purpose of executing a successful master plan, overseeing land use agreements on campus, increasing emergency shelter capacity on campus, with a special emphasis on female veterans, and redoubling VA's effort to streamline placement of homeless veterans into permanent supportive housing throughout Los Angeles County. In witness whereof, the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board adopts this recommendation as of March 23rd, 2021. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is Jim Zenner. Working out nonprofit when the special advisor was here back in 13-14, we were able to really provide a lot more input into system pain points and really streamline a lot of the processes as far as getting veterans off the street and into GPD and HHV housing. And I just saw a lot of good work that was done through West LA VA and the special advisor. And I'm particularly excited about voting on this one.
Thank you, Jim.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I, this is Matt McGarren, can I add something to this?
Yes, Matt.
So there's a comment that the Building 257 does not allow for female veterans. So that contract that we have for an HCHB transitional housing has ended with that for those 46 beds, and we're in the middle of designing a all-women program, transitional housing program right now with the 20 female beds.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
General Hopper, I just want to make one comment. You know, of all of these recommendations, this is the one that I am actually least excited about, and I just want to share why. You know, having worked in government for many, many years, having another layer of oversight of bureaucracy built into a system can really be complicated and not always, you don't always get what you ask for. That said, it feels like when we had the opportunity, when I was working for President Obama at the end of his first term, and we had a chance to meet with Vince Kane as the special advisor, as Jim Zenner mentioned, things just happened, and we felt, you know, we had a place to bring the problems that needed to be solved. So I'm ambivalent about this one, but I also want to say it feels that given the extent of homeless problem in Los Angeles County among veterans, you know, something's got to give. So I just wanted to share that with the group.
Thanks, Josh. That is a valuable input. I think many of us that have had experiences in government are always reluctant in adding what might be interpreted as layers. On the other hand, we progressively since losing that particular focus, we seem to be wandering a bit, losing a little bit of intensity of the push forward. And frankly, I don't see much in the future that's going to to get us back on track. There's no question that this particular model worked. The challenge will be, I think, to make sure that it's implemented in a way that brings back that previous focus, collaborative sense of draft master plan that supports the veterans community and frankly stays true to the nature of this almost 390 acres and it's the legacy of supporting our veterans.
Mr. Chairman, this is Philip Mangano. As somebody who was working on the issue of homelessness back when there was the special advisor, just as the recommendation indicates, there was an unprecedented set of actions, unprecedented movement on behalf of homeless veterans, not only with regard to the campus, but in general issues related to veterans by virtue of the special advisor. And I think the way the intent would be to overcome any bureaucratic snafus was that special advisor, which would be the model for what we're asking for, was a direct report to the secretary. So I would say that assuming that that's the model that's replicated, we really rid a lot of the bureaucratic step-by-step processes and have a voice that goes directly to the secretary. And that's the model that made a difference, a substantial difference in the early years of moving the issues forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Other comments?
Yeah, this is Jim Zenner. That is what Philip was saying. It was exactly my experience as a GPD provider. It seemed like the bureaucracy was decreased last time the special advisor was out, just because there was a lot of time spent out in the community and listening to veterans, not just providers, but also the homeless veterans in the actual shelters. And I think I saw a lot of that information filter up, and a lot of changes were coordinated with West LAVA, and it went really well. So I saw it as a bureaucracy buster versus a creator.
Philip Mangano again, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't agree with Jim more, and I think it was probably more veteran input, individual veteran input in town halls and in meetings across LA County. It was, again, to use the word of the recommendation, it was unprecedented. So, and I know that our concern in the VCOEB is to get as much veterans input as possible. That special advisor role provided the mechanism for that input. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Philip. Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move, Philip Mangano, I so move this recommendation.
This is Jim Zenner. I second it. Sorry to cut you off, Mr. Chair.
No, that's all right. Thank you very much, Jim. It's been properly moved and seconded to approve this recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the recommendation is passed unanimously. I think that's the end of our recommendations. We are running a little bit behind. I will put the DFO on the spot and say we will faithfully hear our public comments. And let me turn it back to the DFO very briefly for setting the ground rules to start the public comment period.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. And we're going to get set up here for public comments. As soon as I can get this screen to load, we can move into that. We have to go a different route again. Just bear with me, please. Stop. All right. The first individual is actually calling in telephonically, sir.
Okay.
At this point, I do not have a way of identifying them by telephone number. WebEx only has telephone numbers. So when my intent to ensure that we allow this individual who registered first to actually address the VCOEB, I may have to go through a couple of iterations of phone numbers to make sure we get them on the line, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead. Let's do it.
All right, sir. Just 1 minute here. I'm trying to get set up. What you'll see here, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, screen 2. Okay, so I'm sharing this screen. The first individual we have is Mr. Ryan Thompson. So what I'm going to try to do now is to get Mr. Thompson online here.
To be
Participants, view all attendees. All right, so here's the first caller. Unmute. Do I have Mr. Thompson on the line, Ryan Thompson? Okay, let me try this line. Hello, do I have Mr. Thompson on the line, Ryan Thompson?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello.
Is this Mr.
Hello?
Thompson? Ryan?
This is, yes. Can you hear
Very
me?
good, sir. Thank you. Sorry it took a minute to get to you because I don't have an indication of telephone numbers. If you stand by 1 second, we'll get started here, and I'll tell you when you start time. Just as a reminder, you will have 5 minutes, and I'll tell you when your 5 minutes starts, and I will actually attempt to give you a countdown because you're on the phone. So you can. So for everyone else that can view the screen, you can see the 10 individuals that were selected based upon their time and date of their registration. Mr. Thompson, go ahead. Your time is starting now.
Thank you very much. You know, I actually jumped on this call a few minutes late, so presuming that it wasn't said before I was on the call, I haven't heard much at all about housing development for homeless veterans at all throughout this conversation. So I do want to add a couple of comments about that. Actually, not comments, facts. There was no competitive process by which the principal developer was selected as far as prevailing authorities that govern such procedures go. The public laws that are in place for VA to abide by in terms of selecting developers, you know, for the West Los Angeles VA were just not followed, plain and simple. There was no legitimate process by which service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses were included in any of the master planning to redevelop the West Los Angeles VA Soldiers Home, and that would go as far back as all of the master plans to privatize it since 1988. Amid claims, there are no EULs in existence for buildings 205, 207, and 208. That's presuming we are to trust the Freedom of Information Act and other VA records of land use agreements. The latest one being satisfied through December 30th, 2020, reports no enhanced use leases whatsoever for the principal developers or anybody else involved with those buildings. I do want to mention, too, that the Draft Master Plan website is a privately managed and operated website. That is not a VA website. So I think, you know, the information on that site is a bit suspect, if not false, because it reports that there are EULs for those buildings. Overall, you know, I want to say it's difficult to ascertain the value of a private developer if they are given land free of rent and tax for 75 to 99 years, ultimately entirely financed by public funds, are guaranteed tenants entirely subsidized by public funds, have little to no liability for default on the deal, and will make multi-million-dollar fees on the deal, which will be authorized to manage all accounts receivable and invoicing throughout the term and would carry title in the public land. What benefit does a third-party private developer have? Because I don't really see what they're actually doing there. Prevailing authorities of public law require public hearings, public notices, veteran service organization participation, veterans participation, congressional procedures, VA secretary reporting, and the VA secretary's personal execution to engage in any land use agreements at the West LA VA Soldiers Home. Yet most of all the foregoing have never legitimately occurred, as abundantly evident on record. The biggest atrocity that I see is that all non-compliant land use deals at the West Los Angeles VA Soldiers Home are presented as open green space throughout the master planning of these private third parties that are attempting to privatize the West LA VA Soldiers Home. In accordance with the West LA Leasing Act as amended, VA is prohibited from entering into land use agreements and new leases since September 28, 2018, because none of the VA OIG recommendations have been satisfied since they found approximately 60% of all third-party land use deals at the Westlake VA Soldiers Home non-compliant with public law. Since January 28, 2014, the purported master plan and Westlake VA Soldiers Home land use reforms have not significantly reduced veteran homelessness in Los Angeles. Whether they had a special advisor to the secretary, whether they had principal developers that were, proposed by Brentwood developers, it hasn't budged. No matter how many vouchers have been presented to ask, landlords in the local communities here in LA County to house the veterans instead of the VA, it hasn't done anything for to reduce veteran homelessness in what is now our nation's capital of veteran homelessness. So, these ideas have truly failed. I want to get into the developers here that have been proposed for buildings 205 and 208, because on record, the VA has never mentioned them whatsoever in any of these meetings or the master plan or anything. And that would be, essentially Vivian Ming Lum, Blue Green Preservation, Figueroa Economical Housing, and others. Step Up on Second's involved with this. Mr. Mangano knows a lot about Step Up on Second because he's on their board. These developers proposed for buildings 205 and 208 are currently facing trial in the city of Los Angeles. For
1 minute left.
Are currently facing trial for fraud, deceit, quiet title, and other causes for what the city claims is using the homeless housing programs and public land as their personal bank account. Beyond that, congressional registrations prove the only apparent cause of Blue Green Preservation's illegal agreements with VA is approximately $80,000 of lobbying to the White House prior administration. So, I'll conclude here by saying, even though I have more to say, there's a lot of fraud riddled throughout this entire process, and it has never even feigned to try to follow what it should have in terms of its mandates for veterans' input and participation in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I think our next speaker is, thank you, Mr. Thompson, very much for your comments. The next speaker is Ms. Travers.
Hello, Ms. Travers, are you on? Hello, Ms. Anastasia Travers. Well, you just muted yourself. Let's see. Ms. Travers? There you go. You're on. I can't hear you, ma'am. Ms. Travers, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. All right, you just muted yourself. Let me unmute you. All right, now you can try again, ma'am. Ms. Travers, we'll just go to the next person and see if we're having a problem across the board, but I'll make sure we come back to you at some point.
Looks like next on the list is Robert Reynolds.
Just a minute, sir. Mr. Reynolds, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Very good, sir. Let me know when you start talking, I'll start your time.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my concerns with the West Los Angeles VA and everything going on in the property, specifically to the mistreatment of homeless veterans, the way I see it. I personally went through an experience arriving at the West LA VA in 2018 to try to get services from the VA, and I was forced to sleep on the sidewalk. And that sidewalk that I'm speaking of is San Vicente Boulevard. There are currently 51 unhoused veterans out there. 39 are healthcare eligible, 11 are non-healthcare eligible, 15 are combat veterans. We have 3 females, and we have 1 that's there with his mother and his wife. There are some serious issues that need to be addressed within the West Los Angeles VA. I think first and foremost, the CTRS program needs to extend its hours of operation for admission. The way it works right now is when veterans arrive to CTRS to get inside the camping location, they're sent to building 402 to get a referral. Then they're sent to building 500 to get a negative COVID test, and they never make it back in time by the 2:30 p.m. cutoff time. And then the VA police tell them they have to leave the property, and they end up out on the street with us. These are things that need to change. There needs to be a focus on same-day services. When people come in, there needs to be a location they can go to where they can get everything done. The Welcome Center has been falling behind on this. We've received over 350 veterans since April of last year when we set up the tents outside the West Los Angeles VA. there needs to be a staging area on the property where homeless veterans can arrive. And while they're going through the process of trying to get registered and get accepted into these programs, they need to have a place to stay. They need to be offered a bed and a cot. Very easily, they can set up the mobile medical units. I saw that CTRS did that yesterday for the social workers. They could set up one of those units and put cots in it for veterans so they don't end up on the street. I know I would like to see definitely more engagement from the executive leadership team at the West LA VA. For about 2 months now, we've been having outreach events every Thursday at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. We have every agency there. SSVF, VPAN, AMVETS, St. Joseph's, Salvation Army, VA researchers, VA peer support, county agencies, and we've yet to have the VA executive leadership or anyone that can make decisions and make things happen come to these meetings. And that definitely needs to happen. There needs to be a better line of communication between veterans and leadership at the West LA VA. Their input needs to be taken. I think it's really important that input needs to be taken from the veterans that are actually going through this process. The veterans that show up at the West LA VA trying to get help and are constantly denied consistent services. That is where it stands today. They are constantly denied consistent services. And now we have a quarter mile of tents stretching down Brentwood in Los Angeles. We've had a vehicle accident crash into the tents. We almost had 2 veterans killed 2 weeks ago. We had a suicide attempt with great bodily injury from a combat veteran last week. And we have veterans with their family members showing up at the VA looking for help with nowhere to go. And this is really concerning to myself and many others. It's also concerning to the people in Brentwood that want to see something change here. And until plans are put in place where there can actually be a same-day service that happens, because same-day rarely happens. I want to reiterate that. Same-day services rarely happen. You're going to continue to have a problem with veterans being out on the sidewalk with nowhere to go. And that's something that the VA needs to take seriously. We don't need people on a busy street. They need to be on the other side of that fence. The majority of the veterans out there are healthcare eligible. The majority are healthcare eligible. I hear a lot of misinformation that they're non-healthcare eligible out there, but that is not the case. We've essentially been running the Homeless Veteran Welcome Center. More veterans come to us outside on the sidewalk because we link them up with care and we treat them with respect than go to the Welcome Center or go to other places on the property. And that's where I think that having input of the veterans on the ground and the boots on the ground is going to help, fix this for the future instead of ignoring it. And, I can say I'm not personally happy with the VCOAB meeting. I've been attending them since they were in person back in 2019. I haven't been happy with a lot of things that have been going on this property, and there's time for change. I'm glad to see that, his recommendation against the UCLA baseball field. And I hope we can continue to make progress to make sure that the veterans are taken care of. And, we really want to get this resolved before any more die out on that sidewalk. In the past, there have been veterans that have passed away out there, and it's absolutely unacceptable. This needs to be fixed. These veterans need to get inside and need to get housed, and the line has to be drawn somewhere. And this is something we can't tolerate any longer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. Did Ms. Travers come back, DFO?
Sir, Ms. Travers, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Very good. We can hear you now, ma'am. Yes.
I do apologize for that earlier technical glitch.
Not a problem.
Thank you for your patience.
As soon as you start talking, I'll start your time. You have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you for your patience and for your indulgence. I want to thank all the members of the board for giving us this time to speak. Basically, my only comments are to encourage Mr. Borsler to have himself and his team sort of investigate on their own, create their own due diligence to see that what is really happening at the West LA VA. It's interesting sitting here as a third party, kind of listening to the engagement, and it reminds me very much of when I was in the military and as an enlisted person, and you would have all these officers making all these decisions without the engagement of the enlisted, which I can understand in some cases has to happen. But these pie in the sky ideas and what the reality is of what can happen, what can be and what is doable is something completely different. And I hear a lot of these recommendations that were taken that I don't know what happened in 2013 and 2014, but in recent history, there has been almost no veteran VSO or veteran engagement or any kind of feedback. Decisions have been made. And as you can see with some of these recommendations that are being backtracked because they were already made, clearly without any input of the veterans, possibly with the community. I do understand that a lot of times the community directly engages with national and doesn't engage with the VSOs and the veterans who are helping other veterans on the ground. And I think there needs to be a better communication with some of the organizations and third parties that are in Brentwood and part of the community, and actually having a dialogue with the people that are there outside of the West LA VA encampment and not bypassing them. I have to say, I do feel a bit cynical that this is all done not necessarily in the best interests of the veterans, as is stated as part of the remit of the veterans, which is veterans living on or visiting the campus will be able to experience superior care, support, convenience, and customer service. So far, we have had none of that. If you look at the land use agreements, there's only one VSO that's there, and that's AMVETS. Everybody else is a third-party special interest. As somebody who tried to sign up, for example, with the Brentwood sports facilities, it was very, very regulated. So I could only, I'm going to exaggerate to make a point. It was, on the third Sunday of a full moon when Mercury was in retrograde, was I actually allowed to use the facilities. So I do feel that there's a lot of lip service provided of quote unquote veteran-centric uses from these third-party interests, but they're not really there. And so I would respectfully encourage the Department of VA and National to look at this and to read the IG reports, to read the OGC reports, to find out what is actually happening. And I do appreciate that everybody is given their time and their commitment to this, but one must question the viability of what's being presented in the interests of veterans and not of third-party interests. I know I'm becoming very repetitive, and there was so much to unpack, and I've made so many notes, and I just don't even know where to begin to address it. Besides that, there's no engagement with the community third-party interests. I still don't understand. I know I'm going all over the place. Why are they drilling oil on this land? I mean, it started out 800 acres as a soldier's home, and it was separate from the soldiers' homes that were in other parts of the country. This was specifically deeded as a home, and it was utilized as such, and it no longer is. So why are we talking about HUD vouchers and keeping the veterans outside of the community where they should be? I'm sorry, I'm not more articulate. I feel very impassioned about this, and I appreciate everybody's time. But it just seems such a shame to not get proper veteran interest. I don't know why there's a metro station that's already started getting built on the land, why there's a shell game of this parking lot becomes this baseball field, and then we'll take away from this baseball field and this parking lot, and we'll do this parking lot. And it's, there's 300 acres of land, and the government and the courts have found that it should be used as housing, and it's really not. I do thank you all for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Travers. I think next will be Mr. Juarez. I believe that we're back on schedule.
Mr. Juarez, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Your time starts when you do, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to let you know about the lack of opportunity with the VSOs. When I say VSO, or lack of representation of VSO, I include the VSOs, of course, but I also include volunteers that are actively participating in the care of the residents of Veteran Row, and the rank and file who are up in their years and just can't be there but give us moral support. Recommendations passed today indicate that you are listening, but you still are not acknowledging the hard work and research of others. So are there hidden agendas still? Is there a takeover of the land? There's still that threat. Will the home be completely dismantled and become a venue for the 2028 Olympics? Will Brentwood City encroach? Will indicted developers still outbid veteran-owned developers? Earlier it was asked, who doesn't want to help a veteran? Well, who doesn't want to help a veteran? Veterans do, VSOs do. They've proven it out on San Vicente Boulevard. And the formal veteran service organizations exist for that purpose. However, there has not been any significant VSO here. In fact, the VSO and elected representative meetings that used to be are no longer. The round table of VSOs that used to be is no longer. And regarding the yearly audit issue that was discussed earlier, that's one thing, but the VSOs are monitoring the situation daily. So they should be relied upon more as the voice of the stakeholder and for their information. VCOEB has not publicized any input from the VSO. The last and only attempt to get VSOs to voice an opinion was when DVA from Washington, D.C. officials flew in to try and convince us to sell the land. And that was a weird move, and that was it. VSOs would tell you that the Veteran Row is the unofficial welcome center now, because the VA has closed its welcome center, and VSOs would tell you to take out both baseball fields. This might be we're not going to do this smaller baseball field, but we'll still keep the big one, and that big one doesn't belong there either. VSOs would tell you that there are leases there that are not consistent with this master plan, as evidenced by a recommendation today, but with the veteran master plan either. And the master plan must be consistent with VSOs, meaning that if federal government is going to rely on this FACA board must rely on input, continual input and dialogue, back and forth dialogue with VSOs. So that you see the input on behalf of the VA. A successful master plan is one that should be brought to you by veterans. And the draft master plan has failed miserably. There's still 3,900 veterans who are homeless in the LA County. That's been said over and over again, but there's no urgency on the part of this board to do anything about it yesterday, because that's people are dying. Okay, this is not new to us. Now we hear dialogue that is actually splitting hairs. We'll bring in female veterans with children. Well, that's beautiful that they belong there, but so do any other veterans that are disabled, because this was set aside for a disabled. The only model that should exist should totally bring back the intended use of the land. And the management of a healthcare center is violating the stewardship of the mandated permanent land use that also included beachfront property in Santa Monica. What is FACA going to do about that? And the sense of urgency, you heard Rob Reynolds, is here. People have died out there. People are living in tents as if it was 1932 bonus army. This is 2021. Finally, I'll tell you that I encourage you to seriously consider the whistleblower information, and we can provide you with more detail of that. We want to work with you. Please work with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Juarez. Next up is Ms. Beatriz Camarena.
Hello, can you hear me now?
You're muted, DFO.
I do apologize. Yes, ma'am. Your time starts when you do, ma'am.
My name is
Hello?
Beatriz Camarena. I work for Telaco Property Management, and thank you for allowing this time for me. I want to announce the upcoming housing for veterans. This property is coming up soon in University Park in the city of Los Angeles. This community is for veterans who serve in the active military, naval, or air service. And the veterans needs to be homeless or chronically homeless. This property is offering a child care free for tenants. So it's basically, and it's focused on father or mother with dependent children, including those in the process of obtaining custody. This property is it's a little bit unique in the sense that it's serving this type of population. I mean, single parental with dependent children, but we accept applications for all veterans, homeless, and chronic homeless. We are focused on the 20% and 30% AMI, so it's a very low income population. I know that I wish I could make a contact with Brilliant Corners, because this property has 18 units that are for VASH veterans, like they receive a VASH voucher, but we also have 18 units that are non-subsidized. So we need referrals for those non-subsidized as well, due to the very low income limits. Some veterans do not have the income to pay for the rent for the non-subsidized units. If anyone, wishes to contact me, I know that there is a lot of issues with homelessness, and for everything that I've heard during this meeting, there is a lot of focus on homeless veterans. So if anyone wishes to contact me, I don't see like a chat box on WebEx, but I can provide you with my phone number. You can call me directly. My direct line is 323-629-9496. I don't know if that information is shared with everyone in the panel when the minutes are distributed, but that is my phone number. If I can share flyers or housing applications with anyone, or even with this panel, please let me know and I can email them to you. If you have any questions, please call me and let me know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Camarena.
Sir?
Yes.
So the next individual is Maureen Elias, and she may be one of the call-ins, so we'll have to go through the process of picking her out of the group. So just give me a second here. And,
okay.
Ms. Elias, is this the line you're on, ma'am? Hello, am I speaking with Ms. Elias? Maureen Elias. Hello, am I speaking with Ms. Maureen Elias? Sir, I haven't picked her up on any of the call-in numbers.
Okay, let's move on to the next person. I can't see the list now.
Yes, sir. The next individual would be Miss Janet Turner. Just one second. Let me get her off of mute here.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Turner?
Good afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
Janet Turner with Congressman Ted Lieu's office. I'm going to be brief. I just want to express our appreciation to the board of the VCOEB for your thorough and diligent hard work on behalf of our veterans. Keep it up. We really do appreciate you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your support and attending all of our meetings. I believe you're always there, so we appreciate those inputs. Next, it looks like Mr. Jerry or
Yes, sir. I have hang on one second. Wrong one.
Okay.
I did the wrong one, wrong name. I have Kylie Olerman. Is Mr. Jerry Olerman going to speak on this line, ma'am? You mute yourself. Ma'am, this is Eugene Skinner. Have Mr. Ma'am, I unmuted you.
Hear me?
There you go. I can hear you now, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the VCOEB. I think they're doing a magnificent job. I've been in attendance since just shy of the very beginning and have appreciated what's been going on all along. I had something else I wanted to address. However, there have been things that have come up in this meeting that I would prefer to address rather than what I had planned on. First of all, reference was made to a group of individuals coming out from DC to pressure VSOs into supporting a sale of the property to Brentwood schools. That was the first week in October in 2019. And I have to say that as a BVA VSO representative, I never felt pressured in the least. I also know that the individual from the AVVA did not feel pressured in the least, nor did the representative from the VFW, nor from the DAV, nor from the American Legion, and nor from the Jewish War Veterans. So I'm not sure where all this pressure to sell property came from. It didn't come from any of those VSOs. The other thing I would like to address is concerning the two recommendations that Mr. Allman made regarding the BCOEB and the advising position in relation to the baseball infield to be put in the amendment. The second one of those that Mr. Allman had for recommendation clearly, to me, very clearly made that it was not clear the purpose of the VCOEB having to have a must-have role in recommendations on this. Because that was clearly not evident, then that made the second recommendation a must-do. However, because it was clearly not understood, then the first recommendation, I think, should have been voided. In that I don't think, with any kind of misunderstanding of what the situation was, that the baseball field should have been, or I should say the Second Amendment to the UCLA agreement had never been voided. I always hear all the stuff about this property is supposed to be a home for the homeless VA veterans. If you be strictly according to the agreement, this is a home for disabled veteran soldiers. That's disabled, not homeless. Those are two different things. Soldiers are Army. At the time of this agreement, there was a sailors' home, and Marines were part of the sailors. There was no Air Force or anything else. So by strict agreement, you'd be talking about this property only being made for soldiers, American Army, disabled, not homeless, and volunteer, not drafted. I think it's ridiculous to keep referring to this as having to be a home for homeless veterans. Let's get away from this and get back to what we're trying to do now, which is going with the settlement agreement, making this place, an area that is a home for homeless veterans, all homeless veterans. And I think that's being done with the current master plan as it is. And I think it will continue being done when that master plan is reviewed. That's all I have, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orlman. Next, we have Mr. Matthew Millen.
Sure. Sir, I have Mr. Millen on the attendee list, but I don't have the ability to mute or unmute. Mr. Millen, are you there? I think he was just a registrant. So I am going to go through, sir. We have Miss Patricia Jackson Kelly, Miss Maureen Elias. That I'm going to go through these phone numbers again to give these folks an opportunity to speak if they're there.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. This is Eugene Skinner with the Veterans Community Oversight Engagement Board. Who do I have on the call, please? Hello? Good afternoon. Eugene Skinner with the Veterans Community Oversight Engagement Board. Who do I have on the phone, please? And I'm going to assume this is Mr. Reynolds or Mr. Thompson still on the line, correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Yes, I am.
All right. So, sir, based on what I have at this point, I have negative contact. Maybe this is the first time we've used WebEx in this capacity. Therefore, maybe we need to fine tune how we do call in participants for future meetings. But right now, I do not have contact with Ms. Elias, Mr. Millen, or Ms. Jackson Kelly. Therefore, that concludes the public comment session, sir.
Okay, very good, DFO. Thanks very much. And perhaps those three individuals can hear us, but for some reason we're not able to have an exchange with them. Please continue and submit your written comments to the internet message address that was on the screen earlier. I think it's veofaca@va.gov. Did I get that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Yes. So please, if you can hear us, go ahead and send in your comments. We appreciate the patience of all of the members of the public that signed up and patiently waited in the queue for a chance to make their comments. And we value all of your comments, and we'll certainly take those on and get them to the right place within West LA, or perhaps even back at the department. This concludes this meeting of the VCOEB.
Sir,
yes, go ahead.
Sir, if I might interject. Yes, sir. Sir, just in the event that we did receive some email public comments, I would like to check with the alternate host to see if he has any comments that come in through that venue, and provide the names and number of what we received. So over to you, Mr. Zato.
Mr. Chair, we do have one comment from Mr. Howard Hernandez that we'll enter into the record and we'll share with the board. That's the only comment we've received.
Okay, Chief, thanks very much. I was supposed to remember that, and of course I forgot. So thank you, DFO, for getting me back on track there. Anything else to add at this point, DFO?
Sir, the only thing I have is I think Mr. Burster may have had to step away, and Mr. Wartsky is available to provide any closing comments on his behalf. Other than that, over to you, sir.
Okay, very good. So to all of our, particularly our board members, I appreciate the hard work that you put in, particularly for this session. I think it's evident in a number of recommendations in the exhibits that go with them, the references, it was some of the best work I think that we've had a chance to do, and I think it really shines a bright light on what we need to do to continue to move this effort forward. To the members of the public that were able to attend, I thank you for your inputs, and we will certainly take those into account. And special thanks to the folks from the West LA GLA staff. Your hard work is absolutely always appreciated. Your response during the COVID crisis, which of course is ongoing, unfortunately, has been just superb. And we certainly appreciate the work that you all have done there. And then to the VA staff that's on the line, and to the VEO who had to step away, and Mr. Jim Wierzbicki. Jim, I'll give you a chance now if you have any closing comments.
Oh, very quickly, sir. Thank you very much, General Hopper, and Eugene, the DFO, and Chi, and Tony Bushnell, the whole FAC team, and Betty Mosley Brown is on this call from the Veterans Experience Officer. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for everyone listening to us. Yes, it's true that John Bursler, our Chief Veterans Experience Officer, did get called out just a few minutes ago to have a talk with Secretary McDonough on analysis of some data. He did text me and apologizes for jumping off just a few minutes ago, but I told him that I will be more than glad to end the call. Thank you all very much. Eugene, you're doing a fantastic job. I do have one comment that's given to Anastasia. Ma'am, we heard you loud and clear. You hear how many Veterans Experience Officer people you have on the call. I will personally have a chance to talk to John Bursler as you requested us to do, and Eugene Skinner has it in the record as it was recorded. But thank you all, and thanks to all the public sector who had their comments, and appreciate all the work that you all are doing. Sir, back to you, and thank you for a very good session. And to the entire committee, thank you.
Thanks, Jim, and I promise not to butcher your name quite as badly as I did that time around. I saw the DFO could barely sit in his chair as I did that.
That's fine. Thank you, sir.
So let me just close with another couple of words to the VCOEB board members. Again, thanks for your patience, for your hard work, and I really do appreciate the effort, and I compliment you on the depth and breadth and focus of the recommendations that you generated for this particular session. Now we just need some good follow through to keep going in the right direction. I did not ask GLA about when they thought that we might be able to gather again on their campus. So by way of giving Dr. Braverman a chance to make a closing comment, let me just toss that out to his crystal ball and ask him if he has any closing words.
Well, thank you. So as far as meeting here, it really is going to depend upon the size of the delegation, if you will. So we're going to be reviewing our restrictions, as I mentioned, and I anticipate that by the next time this would roll around in May or June, we would potentially be able to meet, if we have an area large enough for the appropriate social distancing or physical distancing that we'll still need to do, and probably some kind of combined meeting and virtual opportunity will be the way to go for that. We still have travel restrictions in the VA, so it still requires SCS approval for any kind of travel. But I think if the vaccine effort across the country continues to do well and we don't see a big surge from spring break, it'll be more favorable moving out into the future. I appreciate the feedback from everybody, and I'm committed to taking a look at the hours that we have for availability, for example, for CTRS, as it was brought up, and others. Everybody has their perceptions of what's going on, and it's important for us to listen to that. So we'll take a look at that, and we're committed to increasing our communication with the VCOEB, and I think the answer lies closer to input and farther away from decisions. And I think that's where we have to find the happy medium there in regards to the OGC opinion. So we'll take a look at that and all of the recommendations that you're sending up to the secretary. So thank you very much and appreciate the discourse. Over.
Thanks, Dr. Braverman. And I think for my part, perhaps it's safest to say that fall provides maybe our earliest opportunity to perhaps get together again. We're gonna figure out how to rope these electrons in and make it work for everybody. We got a lot closer to it this time around, and I'll give the DFO and the staff a pat on the back for doing that. Let me just see if my vice chair, the Honorable Philip Mangano, has any comments for us.
Well, I'm so appreciative of the recommendations, all the hard work that went in by the two committees to come up with those recommendations, not the least of which were the reason for our being, that is our ability to comment on and make recommendations. That's a critical element of what the VCOEB is. So I think establishing that and ensconcing it in our DNA would be very important, and in the DNA of VA. And certainly the recommendation to return to a model that was instituted by a Secretary of VA, Bob McDonald, where a special advisor was assigned to LA and the surroundings to make things move more quickly and more efficiently. I think those two recommendations are outstanding, along with the others. I just appreciate, General, your continued work here for the VCOEB, your leadership and the leadership of our committee chairs. So a lot of appreciation on that front. And I'll probably need to rectify one statement that was made with the board at a later date. But appreciate everyone's good work.
Okay, thank you, sir. And with that, folks, I think we'll call this a done deal and some really good work. So in the absence of any other comments, we will stand adjourned.
Briefly, I just wanted to say congrats to the DFO. I know this is the new format in the virtual world, but I think you did a great job.
Yes, he did.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Concur.